We will now have our plenary address, which is titled মুক্তিযুদ্ধকালীন চলচ্চিত্র নির্মাতা দৃষ্টিকোণ ও রাষ্ট্রভেদের ইতিহাস নির্মাণের স্বরূপ, and it will be conducted by Professor it will be delivered by Professor Fahmida Akhter from Jahangirnagar University. And for this session, the chair would be Professor Khalid Hussain, also from Jahangirnagar University. May I please request Professor Khalid Hussain to take the floor and kindly start the session, please.
প্রথমে আমি শুভেচ্ছা জানাই, ধন্যবাদ জানাই, অভিনন্দন জানাই আমাদের ভাষার মাস, আমাদের সুখের মাস, দুঃখের মাস, আনন্দের মাস এই ফেব্রুয়ারি এবং ফাল্গুনে এমন একটি আয়োজন করবার জন্য ইউল্যাব এবং ইংরেজি বিভাগকে। এটা নিঃসন্দেহে খুবই আনন্দের যে আমরা আসলে বিস্মৃতিপ্রবণ জাতি হিসেবে আমাদের যে দুর্নাম সেটা ঘোচাতে কিছুটা হলেও সমর্থ হচ্ছি। আমাদের ইতিহাস রক্তরাঙা ইতিহাস, বেদনার ইতিহাস, বিজয়ের ইতিহাস, আনন্দের ইতিহাস, বিমিশ্র একটি অনুভূতি দেয়। আপনার তাই আমরা জানি যে সুপ্রাচীন কাল থেকে বাংলা ভাষা নানাভাবে নিষ্পেষিত, নির্যাতিত হয়েছে। আমরা মধ্যযুগে আব্দুল হাকিমের কণ্ঠে শুনতে পেয়েছি, যেসব বঙ্গেতে জন্মে হিংসে বঙ্গবাণী, সেসব কাহার জন্য নির্ণয় জানি। 19 শতাব্দীতে ঈশ্বরগুপ্ত বলেছেন, হায় হায় পরিতাপে পরিপূর্ণ দেশ, দেশের ভাষার প্রতি সকলের দেশ। এভাবে এগোতে এগোতে আমরা একটি অসম শক্তির সঙ্গে ভাষার লড়াই মারতে হয়েছিল আমাদের। 47 দেশ ভাগ হওয়ার পরের বছরই আসলে শুনতে হয়েছে এদেশের রাষ্ট্রীয় ভাষা হবে উর্দু। প্রতিবাদে ফেটে উঠেছিল এদেশের জনগণ, মূলত এদেশের চিত্ত, এদেশের আত্মা, এদেশের সমগ্র সত্তা তারুণ্যের রক্তে রঞ্জিত হয়েছে আমার মাতৃভাষা। এবং সেই ভাষার যে মানে অন্তর্গত তেজ, ঐশ্বর্য, সৌন্দর্য, সামগ্রিক সারবত্তা, সেটাই আসলে আমাদের প্রাণে সঞ্চারিত হয়েছে। ছদ্ম উপনিবেশিক রাষ্ট্র পাকিস্তান আমাদের মুখের ভাষা কেড়ে নিতে চেয়েছে, কারণ আমাদের সমস্ত অস্তিত্বকে কেড়ে নেওয়া যায় তাতে। ভাষার উপর আক্রমণটা তখনই আসে যখন কেউ চায় যে কাউকে অস্তিত্বহীন করে দিতে, কারণ ভাষাটা ছিনিয়ে নিলে আমাদের অস্তিত্ব থাকে না। আমার সুখ, দুঃখ, আনন্দ, বেদনা, বিপ্লব, ক্ষোভ, ক্রোধ, আনন্দ, ঘৃণা কোনো কিছুই প্রকাশ করতে পারি না, যাতে এই প্রতিবাদহীন একটা অস্তিত্বহীন সত্তায় পরিণত হয়ে দেশের মানুষ তারা রাজনীতির নামে শোষণ করতে তাদের সুবিধা হয়, এদেশের সবকিছু লুণ্ঠন করে নিয়ে যেতে তাদের সুবিধা হয়। ফলে নানাবিধ অত্যাচারের একটি জাতাকলের মানে একটা পারম্পর্য এদেশে চালিত হয়েছে। বিভিন্ন আন্দোলন, গণ আন্দোলন, এগুলো আমাদের মুক্তিযুদ্ধের দিকে ধাবিত করেছে। অনিবার্য হয়ে উঠেছিল মুক্তিযুদ্ধ। আমরা মুক্তি চেয়েছিলাম, যুদ্ধ চাইনি, যুদ্ধে আমাদের বাধ্য করা হয়েছিল। তো এই যে মুক্তিযুদ্ধ, সেটা আসলে এক করতে 1000 বছরের, 9 মাসের নয়। এবং মুক্তিযুদ্ধের আগে যেমন তেমনি মুক্তিযুদ্ধের পরেও আমাদের মুক্তিযুদ্ধ আছে। কিন্তু আজকে যে প্রবন্ধটি উপস্থাপন করবেন ফাহমিদা আক্তার, প্রফেসর ডক্টর ফাহমিদা আক্তার, তার প্রবন্ধের বিষয়টি এটা হচ্ছে মুক্তিযুদ্ধকালীন চলচ্চিত্র নির্মাতার দৃষ্টিকোণ ও রাষ্ট্রভেদে ইতিহাস নির্মাণের স্বরূপ। আমি ফাহমিদাকে অনুরোধ করছি যে তিনি তার প্রবন্ধটি উপস্থাপন করবেন।
আসসালামু আলাইকুম স্যার। ধন্যবাদ স্যার, ধন্যবাদ সবাইকে। আমি একটু কাইন্ডলি আমার স্লাইড একটু ওপেন করতে চাই। আচ্ছা, কি দেখা যাচ্ছে? ইজ ইট ভিজিবল?
জি,
দেখা যাচ্ছে।
ওকে স্যার, প্রথমে তো ভেবেছিলাম বাংলাতেই পড়বো, তো ভাবলাম যে এখানে বাংলাদেশের মুক্তিযুদ্ধের উপরে যেহেতু মুক্তিযুদ্ধকালীন চলচ্চিত্র নিয়ে বলছি, এখানে অনেক ইন্টারন্যাশনাল অডিয়েন্স থাকতে পারে, দ্যাটস ওয়াই I translated in English and I'll present my paper in English. আর আমি ইংরেজিতেই পড়ি তাহলে স্যার। ধন্যবাদ প্রফেসর আরিফা গানি ম্যাডাম এবং ধন্যবাদ ULAB for giving me this opportunity to present my paper. The title of my paper, Wartime Films of Bangladesh, Representation, Reality, and the Framing of History. In this paper, I will scrutinize the interest and perspective of different directors, both from the local and international arena, who made films during the Liberation War of Bangladesh, focusing on the theme of the Liberation War. I'll also look at how the filmmakers tackled and negotiated the issues of atrocity, memory, and witness pain in their films. Overall, the purpose of this article is to analyze the historical significance and aesthetics of the wartime films directed by both the local and international directors. Although we know more or less about the war, I would like to present briefly first a little contextual background of the war. Let's go to my next slide. Okay. The 9-month-long Liberation War of 1971 is the most important and celebrated chapter in the history of Bangladesh. For Bangladeshis, it was a war against Pakistani colonialism and a war for freedom and independence. It was a people's war. Go further back. So at the end of British rule in India in August 1947, the country was partitioned. India and Pakistan came into existence. Although India was founded as a secular republic, it slowly became the state of Hindu majority population and Pakistan as the country for Muslim majorities from the very beginning. East Bengal, with its Muslim majority population, joined Pakistan and was renamed as East Pakistan in 1956. Okay, so despite being separated from each other nearly by 1,500 kilometers of Indian terrain, and having very little in common both culturally and linguistically, East and West Pakistan, then united solely on the basis of their Muslim identity. However, the strength of this religious nationalism later proved fragile as the linguistic identity of Bengalis emerged to be more vigorous than their Muslim identity. The ruling authority of Pakistan was dominated by West Pakistanis, whereas people from East were mostly excluded. So the continual exploitation by West Pakistani rulers, both culturally and economically, compelled Bengalis to a prolonged struggle for autonomy over nearly 2 decades. During this period, the issue of Bengali nationalism also inspired them for demanding their rights, which also resulted in the language movement in 1952, demand for autonomy in 1966, with 6-point program and the Liberation War in 1971. So let's look at about the war atrocity. As a response to the landslide victory of the Army League under the leadership of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman in 1970, the Pakistani army launched systematic military attack, and which was called Operation Searchlight, on the night of 25th March in 1971. It was to subdue the political authority of Army League. Then the conflict started. The 9-month-long Liberation War of Bangladesh drew world attention because of the atrocities and genocide committed by the Pakistani army and their collaborators. They killed approximately 3 million people and raped 200,000 to 300,000 women of Bangladesh. And nearly 10 million Bengalis crossed the Indian borders and took shelter there to escape the vicious attacks by the Pakistani army, and 30 million inhabitants were displaced inside the land. Inhabitants of East Pakistan across all walks of life participated in the war, and then Bangladesh gained her victory on 16 December 1971. But since I'm dealing with the wartime films, let's look at first the subcontinental politics and the position of different countries on the war issue. The subcontinental politics has controlled the background of this war in many ways, and the impact of this war on subcontinental politics has also been significant. The war involvement of the states who were leading the Cold War at the time was due to their relations with India and Pakistan, the two major powers of the subcontinent. India directly supported Bangladesh in the war, and the Soviet Union sided with India. On the other hand, United States and China didn't support Bangladesh but extended a helping hand to Pakistan. Thus, different states have their own interests that control the distinct positions and roles around the war during the time when it took place. Consequently, all the international film directors or organizations that have captured the war in the audiovisual format were also influenced more or less by the perspectives or positions of their own countries surrounding the war. These films, despite being as films based on history, they represented history following the group's interests and perspectives of the directors. Thus, we can say the representation of history is never neutral, whether it is on film or in written form. Eminent historian E.H. Carr asserts the awkward thing about history is that the bias seems an essential element in it, even in the best of history. Therefore, it is essential to examine the perspective and the political ideologies and the personal or state interests of the filmmakers who made wartime films on the theme of the Liberation War. The trauma, the suffering, the resistance, and the revolt of the freedom-seeking people of Bangladesh yielded numerous documentary films by the local and international filmmakers during the Liberation War. It can be seen there that there were 5 foreign countries who filmed the Liberation War: the US, Britain, France, Japan, and India. Among the international mass media who recorded the different conditions and context of 1971 are the BBC, the Granada Television, the French TV, DBS, NBC, NHK, and the Film Division of India. Besides these institutions, a few filmmakers came to Bangladesh during the war, driven by their personal initiatives to shoot the ravage and wounds of the war, such as Lear Levin, who came from USA. I have endeavored to make a list of the wartime films by dividing them into 2 broad groups according to the production arrangement, such as here is the list of the documentaries made by Bangladeshi film directors, and there is another list, the films made by the international film directors. Although I can't claim that it is a complete list, as no research or study could cite the exact number of these films, including films made by foreign filmmakers, many of which are still unknown to Bangladesh. However, the common aspect that we see in these films to portray the Liberation War as mass spectacle for displaying one narratives of pain to other, we see a common tendency of the Western media. Western media to focus on the oppressed, raped, injured images of Bangladeshis rather than portraying their strong resistance. Most of the documentaries made by Western film directors didn't reach Bangladesh to that extent. The target audience of these films were Western people who are more interested to watch stereotyped and injured bodies of East. Many Western media termed this war as Third War. The US TV channels like ABC, CBS, NBC had mentioned the war as Pakistan's civil war, which is still practiced by different media in the West. So the tendency of the different Western media was to focus on the helplessness of Bangladeshis more than their strong ability to fight. Now, I'd like to discuss briefly about the milestone concert called the Concert for Bangladesh, which actually drew world attention to the Liberation War. On 1st August 1971, this concert was staged at New York Madison Square Garden, featuring performers of Ravi Shankar, George Harrison, Bob Dylan, Eric Clapton, Billy Preston, Leon Russell, and many other celebrities. Later, in 1972, a 1 hour, 43 minutes long documentary film was made by soul swimmer with the same name. The concert drew world attention to the unseen human rights violation in Bangladesh, which it had not explicitly articulated. It actually showed a selective part of war cruelties by projecting the footage of refugee camps, starving children, rotting corpses from behind the stage. However, from then on, Bangladesh saw vigorous support from different international media who came forward increasingly to document the liberation war. This sympathy of the Western media through capturing the pain of Bangladeshis could be explained by the view of Susan Sontag. Sontag asserts the journalistic custom of the West to exhibit colonist people as exotic. She depicts the impulses of Western media for capturing the images of injured bodies in the East during different catastrophic events. This disposition is even evident in the poster of Concert for Bangladesh. In this layout, we can see by illustrating the image of a starving child at the center of the poster, this poster connotated Bangladeshis as a starving nation. Similarly, most of the wartime films featured the pain of Bangladeshis. But Major Khaled's War, made by Vania Kauli, is a powerful film that breaks the dominant nature of Western filming journalism. This film was shot, edited, and completed during the war, although Major Khaled, a commander of Mukti Fauj, is the center of this film. It covers the spirited participation and contribution of the war of Bengalis from different walks of life. There is a dominant tendency in the international media to project the contribution of India in this war as a crucial aspect. However, we see in this film, Kauli depicts the Bengalis guerrillas were fighting an armed and invincible combat with the Pakistani soldiers, where she didn't see any Indian. However, she also mentions that the Bengali guerrillas were crossing the borders to have armed trainings from India, disregarding the risk of crossing the border. Kauli spent 8 days in the war zone in June 1971, during when she shot her documentary. We see an interview of a mother in this film who is still struggling to support her child despite being raped and losing her husband to the Pakistani soldiers. Kauli mentions that the woman is still living, having failed to die by suicide, as suicide is preferable for Bengali women than being dishonored by rape. However, this film didn't solely portray the mother in the image of a voiceless subaltern. We see both her victimization and struggle during the war. Now, let's see what about the politics in politics portrayed in Indian films by Indian film directors. Films made by Indian filmmakers represented another narrative of the war. They focus on the greatness and contribution of India in this war to a large extent. India was portrayed in a heroic posture through its support to the neighboring country, Bangladesh. In this regard, we can mention that the film 9 Months to Freedom by S. Shukdev. This non-fiction film represented many historical events in a way of depicting the truth. Following the partition of 1947, it illustrates the oppression of East Pakistanis by the West Pakistani rulers through narration, different interviews with many data, information. However, at the same time, it portrays India with greater importance as a country who gave shelter to the millions of East Pakistani refugees. The film includes many interviews of several international important personalities. Among them, we can mention the name of Mother Teresa, the Senator of USA, Edward Kennedy, British politician John Stonehouse, Swedish economics and socialist Gunnar Myrdal. So, but they all criticize the we were grateful that they criticized the destruction and genocide of Bangladeshis by the Pakistani army, but also applaud the role of India in this war. This film also endeavors to include the interviews of many Bangladeshis. Thus, the film appears also as the voices of the Bangladeshi people, offering their own and unsolicited approval of India's greater role in the war. However, the hinder or off-screen truth is that the film is the product of an Indian director's director's thoughts and his views of the war, who would have ignored the fact that without having modern arms and ammunition, it is possible for a group of people who are inspired by a strong sense of nationalism to defeat a strong armed force like Pakistani army. Perhaps for this, Alamgir Kabir, in his book, recounts Shukdev's view as an outsider's sympathetic view of the struggle. Other films by Indian film directors like Refugee 71, Loot and Lust, The Homecoming, have the same tendency to visualize India in the guise of a rescuer or protector. Deadline Bangladesh, a compilation film by Geeta Mehta, also follows the same line. The exception we find in the film Durbargati Padda or The Turbulent Padma by Hrithik Ghatak, made in 1971. Despite his presence in Pune during the time when he made this film, it seems that by this film, Hrithik Ghatak paid a tribute to his motherland, Bangladesh, that he left during the partition. With a combination of fictional and documentary style in his film, his love and pain for his motherland are depicted in a very melodramatic way. Bangladesh is being pictured as the idealized image of a mother, and for her rescue, we see in this film a portrayal of a steadfast freedom fighter performed by Bishwadit Chatterjee. Songs, visuals, paintings, small pieces of sequences, storytelling, documentary footage, interviews, different shots of processions and meetings held in India in favor of Bangladesh, poetry recitation, musical orchestra, many elements and techniques have been employed in this film. The late Bangladeshi filmmaker Tariq Masud observes that Ghatak in this film emphasized the myth more than the reality of the war. However, many eminent filmmakers from Kolkata were silent on Bangladesh issues during this period. We don't see any cinematic effort from them on the liberation war. Okay, here we will discuss about Nagisa Oshima's film, and I'm giving a subtitle, The Portrayal of a Winning Ballad of the East. In the previous discussion, we saw the different features of the filmmakers of the West and India. The first group is inclined to portray the sufferings of East as other, and the second group focused on the helplessness of the neighbor to depict the significance of their land in the role of a rescuer. Going beyond the trend or traits of these two groups, Japanese film director Nagisa Oshima represents the accounts of the achievement of Bangladesh through the Eastern technique of simplicity and storytelling. His two films, Joy Bangla and Rahman the Father of the Bengal. Joy Bangla is not available online. We have gone through the film Rahman the Father of Bengal. Although Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman is the main subject of this film, it opens its first scene in the waterways of Bangladesh. Floating on water by riding a steamer, Oshima creates a traditional decor and a decor of riverine surroundings of Bangladesh. His destination was Tungipara, the birthplace of Bangabandhu. It takes him 1 day and 1 night to reach there. The fare of the steamer he pays 4 taka, while the daily earnings of a laborer is 3 taka in the context of 1972. Thus, he also intentionally transmits a part of the economic reality of the time in his films. During his journey to Tungipara, he captures different Bangladeshis from different classes, professions, and gender through whom the culture of this land are depicted. Okay. When Bangabandhu first appears in this film, we see him doing prayers surrounded by his counselors for the martyrdom of freedom fighters and then he lays breath on the grave of the martyrs. Afterward, his speech in a public meeting ends with his slogan, Joy Bangla. So here we note that he depicts, Nagisa Oshima depicts the leader of Bangladesh, both with having a notions of faith and secularism. The film never tries to be a well-made film. In Oshima's handheld camera operation, we find sometimes the influence of direct cinema. Often the camera runs very fast while capturing the scene of public meeting. The film ends with a hope that Bangladesh will be built by the hands of the exceptional man who came from a very simple family, Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. We hear, okay, I'll do that. We hear that the final statement in the voice of a narration, the past, present, and the future of that was Bangabandhu Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's life are entirely dedicated to Bangladesh. Now let's go to the Bangladeshi film directors' techniques in portraying the wartime films. They actually feature the way they represented the films made during the Liberation War as a way of portraying self-suffering, registration, and recognition. For Bangladeshi directors, the war was a seminal event to which they had to secure their existence and identity. The war experience drove them to film the reality and history of their motherland through non-fiction films. In doing so, they focused on the sufferings of their own people in order to publicize the war's genocidal dimension. Actually, Alamgir mentions this, that they publicized as a crime against humanity to the outside world. At the same time, they glorified the training and actions of the Muktis in order to strengthen the patriotic sentiment and revolutionary spirit of Bengalis in opposing Pakistani aggression. Okay. The wartime films made by Bangladeshi directors are Stop Genocide and A State is Born by Zahir Raihan, Liberation Fighters by Alamgir Kabir, Innocent Million by Babul Chaudhuri. Zahir Raihan termed these films as Jatiyo Mukti Songramer Cholochitro. That means the films of national liberation war. As these films were made in Kolkata, all these films were made in Kolkata, and in March 1971, following the sudden attack of the Pakistani military in East Pakistan, many film directors, actors, technicians had left their homes in Bangladesh and took shelter in India. Among all of them who came forward first to hold the camera as a rifle during the catastrophic moment of the motherland was Zahir Raihan. Made in black and white, the 20-minute Stop Genocide by Raihan is the first documentary film on the liberation war to be both made and projected during the time of the war. It was co-produced by the Bangladesh Cholachitro Shilpi o Kushuli Sahayak Samiti and the Liberation Council of Intelligentsia. Raihan didn't receive any support or financial assistance for this film from the Department of the Film and Publication of the Provisional or Exile Government of the People's Republic of Bangladesh. Later, the exile government commissioned Raihan to produce 3 more documentary films on the subject of the liberation war. These resulted in Liberation Fighters by Alamgir Kabir, A State is Born by Zahir Raihan, and Innocent Millions by Babul Chaudhuri. So among all these wartime films, I would say that Stop Genocide is considered to be the most appealing film on the subject for its portrayal of the war reality and historical authenticity and artistic merit. Okay. Stop Genocide, by echoing the dialect of third cinema, identifies the condition and complexes of war realities in a stylized approach, focusing on the inert response of the UN to the barbarous act against Bangladeshis carried out by the Pakistani armies. These films denies and disapproves the value of the so-called international political structure that is dominated by an imperialistic superpower. And indirectly, it criticizes the role of the United States in helping to spread atrocities and genocidal crime in Bangladesh by the enormous support it provided to the Pakistani or Pakistan with arms and ammunitions. So this film in three for example, I'm just showing the way of creating a Brechtian alienation effect, how it created. Suppose I'm giving an example, given an example of three sequences. The film in three subsequent sequence, by placing together three realities: the UN Declaration of Human Rights, the violation of human rights in Vietnam and Bangladesh, reveals the contradictory values and beliefs of the ruling ideology of the world and its history. It also creates here a Warframe dance or alienation effect. Nearly all the fragments of the film are constructed in this way, with the inclusion of dialectical effects to create a moment of interruption. For example, most of the sequence conclude with a freeze frame for a few seconds with the word "stop" imposed in the voice of a narration. This recurring anti-realistic effect, by this effect, the director
ফাহমিদা, মানে আমাদের যে বরাদ্দকৃত সময় এটা প্রায় শেষ। হ্যাঁ, তো দ্রুত কনক্লুশনে গেলে ভালো হয়।
আমি কনক্লুশনে চলে যাচ্ছি। আমি শুধু I want to say that okay, I want to say that despite having impulses of third cinema, this film is not without flaws. It actually represents this cinema structured, and it actually construct gender stereotypes in the nationalist struggle, and we see the representation of voiceless women, although he captures women from different age groups. But freedom fighter here was portrayed as a Mukti Pagol, Torun Singho, freedom snatching young lion. However, yet again, we cannot demand for full coverage of the war by a film which has been made during the urgent and immediate circumstances of the war. Now, I want to discuss very briefly how the Pakistani filmmakers actually, they made propaganda film during this period. During the Liberation War, West Pakistani rulers also made some of the propaganda films. The main purpose of these films was to justify their armed attack in Pakistan in the guise of an armed protection. At the same time, these films represented the freedom fighters as terrorists for giving grounds for the genocide by the Pakistani military in the war. Akhter Jong Kardar made Vitriol in 1971. And for projecting Bengalis as well, there was another film called Slaughterhouse. So these films actually, they were based on fabricated and false information about the mechanism of Pakistani propaganda, about which we can hear, there is a very good interpretation or criticism in the film 9 Months to Liberation War. In the course of the time, actually, these propaganda films have been lost. Even the filmmakers later hesitant to depict their involvements in such films. In 2016, a Pakistani-based newspaper called the Express Tribune revealed the list of the film by Akhter Jong Kardar in an article in which there was no mention about the film Vitriol, which he made during the Liberation War. And thus, through this practice of inclusion and exclusion in the history-making process, such film based on propaganda had lost entirely. Let's come to the conclusion. But I want to mention that Akhter Jong Kardar, he was a very prominent filmmaker. His film Jago Hua Savera, made in 1959, went to Oscar. And Zahir Rahan first started his film career by working as an assistant with Akhter Jong Kardar, who actually changed his path upon the course of time. Okay, if we come to the conclusion, except for few propaganda films by Pakistan, most of the wartime films on Liberation War acted very significant roles in the creation of world opinion in favor of East Pakistan. They carry many historical accounts and evidence, thus like historical written documents, this film also have archival importance. They can be seen as alternative history. However, we cannot claim that all of them were successful in the neutral depiction of history. In many cases, the perspectives of the directors influenced the historical reality depicted in wartime films, and the directors' viewpoints were guided more or less by the interests of their countries or by the production companies who assigned them for filming the catastrophic event of the war. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
ধন্যবাদ প্রফেসর ডক্টর ফাহমিদা আক্তার। নিঃসন্দেহে খুবই মানে একটি গুরুত্বপূর্ণ বিষয়ের উপর এই অবতারণা, এই পর্যবেক্ষণ, এই পর্যালোচনা, এই বিশ্লেষণ, এই আন্তরিকতা, এটা নিঃসন্দেহে সবারই ভালো লাগবে। কারণ ছোট একটি বিষয় না, কিন্তু এর মধ্যে আসলে যেটা বলেছি পূর্বাপর আমাদের মুক্তিযুদ্ধ এবং পরবর্তী যে ইতিহাস, তার একটা কেন্দ্রবিন্দু হয়ে আছে মুক্তিযুদ্ধ এবং মুক্তিযুদ্ধ কেন্দ্রিক যে চলচ্চিত্র তখন নির্মিত হয়েছে ৯ মাসের পরিসরে, এবং চিত্র এবং নানা ধরনের চলচ্চিত্র, মূলত এক ধরনের ডকুমেন্টারি ফিল্মই আসলে তখন তৈরি হয়েছে। এবং আমরা জানি যে প্রত্যেক ব্যক্তির যেমন একটা নিজস্ব সত্তা থাকে, সত্তার নিজস্ব একটি অপূর্ব অনুভব থাকে, এবং যার পেছনে আসলে নিজস্ব অভিজ্ঞতা এবং চারপাশ থেকে অর্জিত যে অভিজ্ঞতা, সেটা তার মানে নন্দনতাত্ত্বিক ভিত্তিটা গড়ে তোলে। এটা এই ব্যাপারটা আসলে জাতির ক্ষেত্রে ঘটে। সমস্ত জাতি যতটা মানে নিপীড়ন নির্যাতনের মধ্য দিয়ে মুক্তিযুদ্ধে এসেছে, যেটা আসলে জহির রায়হান কিংবা আলমগীর কবিরের পক্ষে বোঝা সম্ভব, কিংবা পরবর্তী সময়ে আমাদের যারা আসলে মুক্তিযুদ্ধ কেন্দ্রিক মোর্শেদুল ইসলাম বা এমনকি সুভাষ দত্ত বা আমাদের আরো যারা তৈরি করেছেন, তারা যেভাবে বিষয়টা দেখেছেন অন্য কারো পক্ষে এটা আসলে বোঝাটা সম্ভব না। আর যে কোনো কিছুরই শেষ পর্যন্ত একটা বাণিজ্যিকীকরণের একটি প্রবণতা থাকে, ব্যক্তির যেমন থাকে, জাতির যেমন থাকে, রাজনীতির যেমন থাকে, রাষ্ট্রনীতির একটি দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি থাকে, এবং সেটার প্রতিফলনটা কোন না কোনো ভাবে ঘটে। একটি মানে গাছে যেভাবে ফুল ফুটে ওঠে, শিল্পী তার মনের মধ্য দিয়ে আসলে যেভাবে একটা ফুল ফুটিয়ে তোলে, চলচ্চিত্র খুবই মিশ্র একটি মাধ্যম, খুবই জটিল এবং যৌগ একটি মাধ্যম, কিন্তু এর মধ্য দিয়ে আসলে সুন্দর যে চূড়ান্ত রূপটিও তুলে ধরা যায়। কিন্তু পিছনে যে কাজটি করছেন তার আসলে উদ্দেশ্যটা কি, তার বিকাশটা কি, তার চারপাশের আয়োজনটা কি পরিপ্রেক্ষিতে তিনি আসলে অগ্রসর হচ্ছেন এই কাজে। সিনেমা বা চলচ্চিত্র যে কোনো সময় একটি জটিল কাজই, এটি ব্যক্তির হাতে ক্যামেরা নিয়ে ঘুরলেও বা সদল বল ঘুরলেও জটিল একটি কাজ। কিন্তু এর পেছনে আসলে কি কাজ করে, মস্তিষ্কে বা তার দার্শনিকতার মধ্যে কি থাকে, কোন দর্শনকে তিনি আসলে বিকশিত করতে চান, সঞ্চারিত করতে চান দর্শক শ্রোতার হৃদয়ে, সেটা অনেকটাই ডিপেন্ড করে ওই ব্যক্তি কার দ্বারা পৃষ্ঠপোষকতা পাচ্ছেন, কার দ্বারা আলোচিত হচ্ছে, কতটা তার নিজের। আর যুদ্ধ, যে কোনো যুদ্ধই আসলে আমি জানি মূলত দ্বন্দ্ব, যেমন নাটকে একটি দ্বন্দ্ব ছাড়া তো যুদ্ধের ব্যাপার ঘটে না। পৃথিবীর যে কোনো প্রান্তে যে কোনো যদি যুদ্ধ ঘটে, তাহলে মনে করতে হবে দুটি ভাগ আছে, হ্যাঁ, দুটি দল আছে। একটি দেশে হলেও দুটি দল আছে। সমস্ত পৃথিবী ভাগ হয়ে যায় যদি কোনো একটি যুদ্ধকে কেন্দ্র করে বিভক্ত হবে, এবং নিঃসন্দেহে যে যার নিজস্ব যে উদ্দেশ্য হাসিলের চেষ্টা করবে, সেটা রাজনৈতিক উদ্দেশ্যই। বিমান আবুল হাসানের একটি কবিতা হচ্ছে, দালান হচ্ছে তাও রাজনীতি, দালান ভাঙছে তাও রাজনীতি। এগুলোর মধ্যে রাষ্ট্রীয় কিংবা কোনো জাতীয় সেই মানে চিন্তার বা দর্শনের প্রতিফলন ঘটেছে। এই চলচ্চিত্রতেও আমরা আসলে তার প্রতিফলন থেকে আমরা মনে হয় একটু বেশি সময় নিয়ে নিচ্ছি সম্মিলিত ভাবে। তো আমি মনে করি যে আজকে আমরা শেষ করতে পারি। আমি ধন্যবাদ জানাই আয়োজকদের, এবং এই আবারও বলি এই ভাষার মাসে এই আয়োজন এবং আজকে যেটা, এটা অনেক চিন্তার করা যোগাবে। ছোট্ট একটি জায়গা থেকে আমরা মানে অনেক দূর চলে যেতে পারবো। আমাদের ভাবনা নতুন নতুন সারবত্য যুক্ত হোক, সংযুক্ত হোক। আমরা যেন আমাদের চেতনাকে আরো আলোকিত করতে পারি, আমরা নিজেদের আরো সক্রিয় করতে পারি, ভাবনাকে আরো ঘনীভূত সৌন্দর্য করে তুলতে পারি। এগুলোর মধ্যে দিয়ে আমাদের নান্দনিকতার চর্চা, আমাদের শিল্প চর্চা, আমাদের মনুষ্যত্ব চর্চা, আমাদের বিবেক বৃত্তির চর্চা যেন আসলে প্রসারিত হয়, আরো সতেজ পরিপুষ্ট হয়, এটাই প্রত্যাশা। আজকের মতো আমার মনে হয় যে সেমিনারটি শেষ করতে পারি, পরের সেমিনারের জন্য অপেক্ষা করছি। সংযুক্ত সবাইকে অনেক ধন্যবাদ এবং কৃতজ্ঞতা জানাই।
Thank you so much, Professor Akhter and Professor Hossain, for that session. We have come to the end of this session, ladies and gentlemen. We will have parallel sessions now, starting very shortly at 3:40 p.m. There will be 3 parallel sessions in 3 different rooms on Zoom. The links will be posted in the chat. Do check it out. Paper presenters are requested to be at their designated rooms from the beginning of the session. And I look forward to seeing you again in this main room after the parallel sessions at 4:40 p.m. for a final plenary session of the day. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you.